All right, guys, welcome to today's presentation. This is going to be an exciting. This is one that has been in demand for quite some time. U.S. versus Canada, wholesale real estate. Okay, these are going to be some of the key differences between you wholesaling in Canada and wholesaling in the U.S. Now, if you are new to the page, welcome. My name is Jefferson Ortiz. I'm here with Ortiz Equity Group. We are based out of Hamilton, and we started wholesaling back in 2021. We started here in Canada, but we've also expanded down to the US, and we've also built a portfolio of about 330 rental properties. Okay. Now, again, if you're new to the page, make sure to like and subscribe. Today's presentation is going to be all about US versus Canada, right? A lot of the information you might find online is going to be US. So today we want to break down what is the key difference between US and Canada when it comes to wholesaling real estate. All right, guys, buckle up. Make sure to write down any questions that you have below, and make sure you make comments to see if there's anything specific you guys want me to make content on. But without further ado, let's kick it off, guys. So wholesaling in US versus Canada. All right. So first thing I want to cover, guys, is this, just a quick disclaimer. This is mainly for educational comparisons, not to throw shade on any market. We operate in both. Like I said, we do business virtually, completely all over Canada, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Nova Scotia, Winnipeg, Ontario, BC, right? And then we also do a lot of business out in the US, Michigan, Indiana, Florida, Texas, Ohio, right? So again, I hope this video helps you understand the difference so that you can choose your market wisely, or what we do is we do both markets. But if you're starting out, I highly recommend you start off with one market. All right, guys. So what are some of the key major differences between both markets, right? So the first one that we want to talk about is legal structure. In Canada, we use lawyers in order to wholesale the deals. So you talk to a lawyer, there's usually three lawyers: the seller's lawyer, your lawyer, and then the buyer's lawyer. So there's three lawyers involved when you're doing it in Canada. In the US, depending on which state you are in or that you're doing business in, and by the way, guys, you guys can do it completely virtual in the States from Canada. So I want to point that out. In the US, you're going to be using both title companies, and you're also going to be using escrows. Those are going to be and attorneys. That's what you're going to be using. It all depends on which state you're operating from. So that is one of the major differences between Canada and the US. In Canada, we use lawyers. In the US, they use title companies, attorneys, and escrow. So that's the first major difference. This, and part of that, I guess I will add, is your purchase and sell agreement for Canada to the US is going to be completely different. In Canada, you have to do it by province. In the US, you'd have to do it by state, right? Now, the second biggest major difference between US and Canada is going to be data access. In the US, a lot of the information is all public information. So you're able to see who's behind on their taxes, who is inherit a property. You can usually find out who owns a property. So information in the US is a lot more available to everybody, right? In Canada, because of the laws and regulation, it's a lot of the information is very hard sometimes to find that information, right? So the data is going to be a big component that is going to be different. Now, with all that being said, in Canada, there is methods and ways around to find out when the owner bought it, how much they paid for it, who owns the property. So there is some ways around it to get around that specifically. Now, the third one, and this was pretty big here, is competition. So because in the US, it's so easy to get started, therefore there's so much more people that are, the room to entry is very small. So therefore, there's a lot more people that are getting started or they're getting into the business. In Canada, because the information is not public, there's a little bit more roadblocks to get started, or at least if you're brand new, it can be a little bit more challenging to get started. Now, with that, there's pros and cons. The pros is that less people get into wholesaling in Canada because they don't understand the difference, or they don't understand the paperwork, or they don't understand the marketing. So that's part of the main reason why we created this channel. But that would be probably the major difference. Now, here's the pros and cons to each. The pros of the room to entry being so low in the US is that you have so much people, so that there's so much competition. These are just some stats here, but in the US, there's over 100,000 wholesalers. Now, some of them may be new, some of them may be more experienced, but there's over 100,000 wholesalers easily. Now, in Canada, it goes down significantly. I say like active wholesalers, between 100 to 200, like real serious wholesalers, probably closer to 50, maybe 60. And then there's some that maybe do deals here and there. So the competition in Canada is extremely less competition comparison to the US because of the bigger economy and because there's just the room to entry is so much more lower. Okay. Kind of covers that last point, which is market saturation, because the US low entry and all this data and so much social media wholesalers, the market is very saturated. There's a lot of competition. Sometimes I remember, when we talk to some of the sellers, they're like, this is the 10th call that I get. Like there's a lot of people making calls and all that stuff, right? Again, not to say you can do deals in both markets. I just want to make sure I really highlight that. So US, extremely saturated. There's a lot of competition. Canada, there's a lot less competition. So I tend to say there's a wide open opportunity. Okay. Now, keep in mind, guys, you guys can do the business completely virtual from US or from Canada. We do business all over Canada, completely virtual, and we do the same thing in the US. All right. So we kind of went over this, but legal framework in the US, title companies handle all the closing, escrow accounts, holding funds during the transaction. Contract assignment rules vary by state. Now, I will mention this right now, is that in the US right now, there is a bit of I guess you could say, there's a bit of a transition being done in terms of there's states that are not allowing you to wholesale unless you have a realtor license. Places like South Carolina, places like Chicago, they're making it very difficult for you to wholesale, and they actually do require you to have a license, right? So we are seeing kind of the trend happening in the US, and other states are passing laws like that, right? Some are friendly, others restrict, right? Typical closing timeline on a house in the US can be between 30 to 45 days. Obviously, there's paperwork and insurance and standard practice, right? Now, one thing I want to add to this as well is that again, depending on the state, you are able to wholesale depending on the states. So do be very mindful of that. So that's a little bit on the legal framework in the US, right? And again, so keep in mind and do some research on what state you want to do it, because it'll depend on which state and if you need a license. Go here back. Okay. Now, legal framework in Canada. In Canada, we use lawyers. So lawyers handle all of the real estate closings and required by law, right? So instead of escrow, here in Canada, lawyers are usually the ones that are going to be handling the transaction. You have the seller's lawyer, you have your lawyer as a wholesaler, and then you have the buyer's lawyer as well. So there's 3 separate lawyers in a transaction. So that's a major difference that is different between US and Canada. So that's basically kind of how it works. Now, depending on which province in Canada you are in, you're going to need to get a lawyer in each province. If it deals in Alberta, then you're going to need to use an Alberta lawyer. Vice versa, if you use Ontario, so on and so forth, right? This streamlines approach through common law simplifies transaction compared to the US. So it is a bit different in regards to the middle person. In Canada, we have lawyers. In the US, they have title companies and attorneys in escrow. Okay, guys? Again, we kind of touched on it here, but again, data access. The US has extensive data because it's all public information. You can find out who your neighbor is if you wanted to, right? So that I would say is a major difference in the US. So again, in the US, you can pull MLS foreclosed. Obviously, MLS listings, you can pull it anywhere, even in Canada. But properties that are being foreclosed on, people that inherit the property, people that have a property in Texas, but their address is registered in like New York. You can pull that kind of data in the US. So that's a big major component in the US when it comes to wholesale and real estate. Again, you can get tax code, tax delinquency, code violation lists that are readily available. This, unfortunately, is not something that you're able to get in Canada, but in the US, you do have that. It's all public information, right? Again, pros and cons to each. Skip traces. In the US, you also have skip tracing. So that means when you find out, like if you, let's say you get a list of people that are behind on payments, you can actually skip trace it. So you can pay a company and they'll skip trace it and give you a bunch of different phone numbers for the sellers. In Canada, we are very limited in this side as well, right? So in Canada, typically we don't really have like skip tracing companies like that. There is one company we use, but half the time the information is not correct. But there is, again, other ways in Canada you can go around finding who owns the property. Okay. Last one, courthouse records. Public courthouse records enable easy property research. Again, because it's all public information, it's a lot easier to find out who owns the property, who's on title, what's their mortgage like. There's a lot of information like that in the US that is readily available to people. All right. Canada, data access in Canada. Now, in Canada, because we don't have the ability to be able to get a pre-foreclosure list, or we're not able to get a vacant property list or code violations, in Canada, there's different methods that work in Canada, right? I'll point out some of the ones that we have here. So the first one is direct mail. And this is, guys, by far one of my favorite strategies, direct mail campaigns. So sending out flyers to homeowners, it's a really good method to generate those inbound leads and find out who wants to sell the property. Another one is cold calling, right? Now, this could be potentially for sell by owners. So maybe a website like Gigi or Facebook where you have owners listing their property. You can actually cold call them and make them an offer on the property. So that's one of the methods here. The third one, and again, depending on which market you are in Canada, this is one of my favorite ones, especially now that summer and things are warming up a little bit. Driving for dollars, getting inside your vehicle, whether you're driving, whether you're walking, whether you're biking, it doesn't really matter. And look around for ugly properties. What are ugly properties? Tall grass, broken windows, boarded up, right? A lot of junk in the front. Those are boarded up houses. And then you want to approach those owners and ask them if they would consider selling their property. Okay. The last one is relationships, right? Relationships could be realtor relationships. It could be lawyer relationships. It could be just you getting out of your comfort zone, going out to a meetup and figuring out who may have some golden nuggets that I'll give for the people that are still here on the call right now. Is calling everybody, like, people that do pest control or, companies that do demolition, and give them a call and say, hey, this is what I do. This is my services. I'd love to see if you have any potential clients that would be a good fit for me to buy the property. I'll give you a referral fee. That could be, again, anything from inspectors, property inspectors. It could be contractors. It could be property management companies. These are all people that you can build relationships and you can work out and get a lot of deals from them. All right, guys. Now, going here to the next slide here, competition and market. Saturation overview, right? The wholesale real estate market in the US and Canada differ dramatically when it comes to the competition. I brought this up a few times, but I really want to point that picture home, right? Understanding what market has more saturation is in the difference is crucial for choosing your market and as you position yourself. Now, here's my recommendation. If you're in Canada, right, and you're in Ontario, Alberta, Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, absolutely you should get started in your local market. But again, you can do it completely virtual. If you are in places like BC, you can still get started in your market, but because of the price points, you could also consider virtually wholesaling in other markets. But if there's something in you that you want to do in the US, by all means, we encourage you. We do it in the US, guys. So I really want to point that picture home that we're not saying Canada or US is better than each other. We're just giving the comparison so that people have all the information they need to make a decision. Okay. So competition on margins, right? Because of the competition, right? And because of the spreads and how much people may be offering the seller, because you're competing with so many more people, a lot of that also has an impact on the wholesale fees, how much you can make as a wholesale fee, right? Because let's say you offer the seller a low amount, another wholesaler that is new and doesn't know any better might offer a little bit higher. So because of the competition, it may impact how much you can actually make per deal. Okay? So US lower profit margins and increases deal sourcing difficulty, right? In Canada, low competition enables higher margins and easier access to quality deals. Because the information in Canada is not as readily available as it is in the US, that makes it so that is actually, if you know how to do wholesaling in Canada, it's a very profitable business. And I would say, let me see here. I guess we'll go into here in a second. But I would say is the wholesale fees in Canada can definitely be a little bit larger than in the US for sure. Now, assignment fees, right? This is a big one. Like, what is my wholesale fee in Canada? What is my wholesale for the US? That might help you determine which market you want to target. So assignment fees comparisons, right? So in the US, wholesalers are typically earning 5 to 10% of the purchase price due to high competition. Canadian wholesale generally command higher fees due to less competition and deal scarcity, creating better profit opportunities. So what I mean by this is, in the US, you probably are going to do more deals, but those deals are going to be lower amount that you make per deal. For example, your average fee might be $10,000 per deal. So if you do 5 deals, then you do, if you do 5 deals at $10,000 each, that's $50,000. But that's 5 deals, 5 sellers, 5 buyers, 5 negotiations. As opposed to in Canada, your wholesale fees are between $20,000 to around $25,000. So if you wanted to make the same amount of money that you would make in the US with those 5 deals, you would only have to do 2 deals. So if you do 2 wholesale deals, you would get to the same goal as if you had done 5 deals. So that's the big difference when it comes to assignment fees, and something to definitely keep in mind when it comes to wholesale fees. Now, I do want to point out, wholesale fees on a house might be, or a duplex might be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Wholesale fee on an apartment building or a piece of land could be $100,000 upwards of millions of dollars. So we kind of went over this profit margins, right? In the US, lower margins due to intense competition, but higher deal volume. We just went over that. In Canada, higher margins through less competition and new relationships based on sourcing methods. Key factors: competition level, data access, and deal volume capacity. So pros and cons to each, right? You want to do more deals, or do you want to do less deals and make the same money, right? It just kind of depends how you position that, right? All right. So market entry, right? We talked about the U.S. legal complexity. So there is a little bit more when it comes to the U.S. When it comes to, if you're doing it from Canada, you want to talk to a cross-border accountant. What is the legal way to get money in and out of Canada? The other thing you want to keep in mind when it comes to the US is that it's very much dependent on the zip code, which in Canada, you know it as a postal code. So in the US, you're looking for a zip code. So you could be in this street and properties are like 100,000. You could go down the street and properties all starting are $500,000. So in the US, it's very important that you understand and you know the zip codes, because neighborhood by neighborhood can be completely different. And so you got to really know your zip codes and your areas within each market. Now, in terms of the US competitive leads, saturated market with 100,000 plus wholesalers competing for deals. So again, because there's so much people in the US trying to wholesale, and even not just in the US, there's people from outside the US. Even I know people that are in Colombia, people that are in Egypt, people that are in Africa that are wholesaling in the US or trying to. So that creates a lot more competition, whereas Canada is a little bit overlooked, in my opinion. Now, again, this is the barriers that we have here. In Canada, one of the biggest barrier is information. And again, this is part of the main reason why we have this YouTube channel, to provide a ton of value, provide a lot of resources for any Canadians that may be getting starting and they're stuck. So in Canada, limited data. We don't have tax foreclosure lists. We don't have code violation lists, no public foreclosure, tax delinquency. So in here, we got to get more creative. Like I said, direct mail. One of the other things we do is Facebook ads. Like, you have to get creative in order to generate those leads. But what I can tell you is, although it's different to do it in Canada, the methods that we have used and understand have worked tremendous, and they've made us hundreds, if not millions of dollars. So once you know it, you're in it, and it's like a whole other world opens up. Canada relationship networks. So I would say yes, absolutely. I mean, I would say this applies to both Canada and in the US. Okay. And what I mean by this is, you want to build strong relationships with, realtors, property managers, contractors, right? Investors, right? So I would say, as much as it is Canada, I'd say it's also US. You got to know who your buyers are. And so networking does become a big factor of not just Canada, US, but the business in general. Okay. So that is when it comes to relationships. Those are the other thing that I would say that is important in the US. Okay. Now, strategic advantages of the US market, right? Like I mentioned, extensive data, investors, a lot of investors in the US, of course, right? Because the prices are so low. So investors are very active in the US, and they're buying sometimes 50 to 60 properties a year, right? So volume, but again, smaller margins. State-specific tools, variety of legal tools and escrow services by state. Very much, if you guys are going to go do it in the US, make sure you understand the rules and make sure that you can actually wholesale legally in the US. This, what I'm going over this in terms of like having to have a license, does not apply to Canada. This is only in markets in the US, like South Carolina. I know Oklahoma is very strict, Chicago. In Canada, this does not apply. You can wholesale anywhere in Canada. There's no license. There's no regulation. I don't really see anything coming because it's so not mainstream like it is in the US, right? Scale and automation, technology-driven opportunities for growth, right? Because of the data, if you have a good system, you can definitely scale your business relatively fast. Now, I will add to this, it's not in the presentation here. I will add another very much strategic advantage in the US is the strategy called novation, Novation, novation. And what that simply means, and I wouldn't want to get too complex with it, but what that means is that you can make an offer to the seller, have the right paperwork in place, and while you have the property with the seller under contract, you can actually sell it on the MLS with a realtor. Now, if you're new to wholesaling, this might go, beyond your mind, but that is something that is able to do it in the US that we unfortunately cannot do it in Canada. Okay. Okay. Now, strategic advantages in Canada, right? Like I mentioned earlier, less competition. Like, even though I have 500, I'm just boosting it. I think realistically, it's probably less than 100 or maybe 200 wholesalers. There's not as much, nowhere near as much as in the US. I can assure you of that. So competition, way less competition, therefore more opportunity for those that are willing to take action, learn the business, work hard, put in the work. There's a tremendous opportunity for sure. Consistent legal framework, one legal system nationwide simplifies transaction. There is no title companies, escrows. Everybody uses a lawyer. That's the way that is done all over Canada. Relationship-based sourcing, direct outreach creates strong seller loyalty. So again, because there isn't as much competitions, marketing strategies like direct mail, bandit signs, door knocking, they're very good strategies to generate leads and talk to motivated sellers. So that is what I mean here when I say relationship-based sourcing. Off-market opportunities, unique marketing yields, exclusive deals. The great thing with Canada is because, again, there is less competition. The margins are really good. And what ends up happening is sometimes you have investors, Canadian investors, that are like, hey, I'll partner up with you. I'll bring all the money. You bring the deal. We partner up together. So it does create some really good strategic advantages. Best practice in the US, leverage public data, use MLS, foreclosure, Zillow, tax delinquency lists, targeted lead generations, right? Build investors network and understand what are the zip codes that you should be targeting in the US. Very, very important. And make sure you're in a big enough market. Don't go into these, and this is Canada or US. Don't go into these small markets where there's not population, they're in the middle of nowhere. Make sure you're in a major market or close to a major market. Understand the compliance, master state-specific legal nuances and state compliant. Very, very important because you can get sued if you don't have a license and you're operating in a specific state. And again, this is kind of a trend that's happening in the US, and I see it continue to happen where they're going to require you to have a license at some point. So keep that in mind. Use technology for volume. There's a lot of data. Because of the data, you can really use technology to help scale your business. Best practices in Canada. Focus on relationship-driven sourcing. Build trust with sellers through personal connecting and networking. It is important that as you do this as well, one of the things that I did is I would get testimonies from the sellers. That goes a long way, especially here in Canada. So let's say you wholesale your first deal, seller's all happy. Hey, go to the seller, bring them flowers, bring them, whatever. If it's a guy, maybe bring them a bottle of whiskey and say, hey, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to buy the property with my partners. I want to record a quick video and just get your experience. At that point, emotions are high, is good. Is a good time to get a testimony. That will go a long way. Use direct outreach methods like direct mail, cold calling, driving for dollars. Those are some of the best methods in Canada to generate those leads. Partner closely with lawyers to ensure smooth flows and legal expertise. Make sure you have a good lawyer that understands wholesaling real estate, not just a typical lawyer that just does, whatever type of transaction. You want one that understands and is familiar with assignments and with wholesaling. Very, very important. Develop tailored marketing, create strategies suited to a less data-driven market. Now, I will say this, guys. One of the marketing strategies which generates inbound leads, we do it both in Canada and in the US, and that is through AI and through automation. And then we do that both in Canada and in the US. They work exactly the same way. All right, guys. So I hope you guys got tremendous value. If you like what you saw here, and it's obviously something that makes sense for you, and if you, beyond this, if you're looking for additional help, additional resources, again, whether you want to wholesale in the US from Canada, or whether you want to wholesale in America, or whether you want to wholesale in Canada, we can help out. If everything that we talked about here and we were able to add some value to you, but you want more strategic, help, or you want the contracts, you want specific marketing strategies based on your market in Canada, or if you want to go into the US and you really want the hand-hold and support, over the last 1.5 to 2 years, my brother and I, since we have been, gratefully blessed with God, we've done really good with our business. We wanted to help more Canadians close their first deal, whether it's in Canada or the US. So we are working one-on-one we're working one-on-one with a selected group of individuals that are looking to invest in themselves and get that roadmap to get to their first deal a lot faster. Okay, guys. Now, again, if this is not for everybody, this is for somebody who's willing to invest in themselves. They want to cut the learning curve. If you don't want that, if that's not you, don't book a call. Keep watching the videos. Keep putting in the comments. Again, there's 2 roadmaps. I always explain this: the free way and the paid way. Right? The free way, you gotta keep going through YouTube, ChatGPT, try to learn on your own. But if you want a roadmap, if you want to know exactly how we did it, how we build our 7-figure wholesale business, and how we also build our multifamily business, then don't hesitate to book a call with us. And I hope you guys got tremendous value from it, guys. More important than anything, guys, take massive action with what you've learned here. Okay, guys? Now, again, if you're new to the channel, I hope you got some value. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and tell me what questions you may have or what other content you want to see, so we can keep putting content that's going to add value to you guys. All right, guys. Jefferson Ortiz signing out. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next one.